It's Wednesday. You all know what that means. It's time for another episode of Life in the Movies podcast. I'm one of your co hosts. My name is Ryan Cam. Thank you all so much for tuning in this week. We're going to be returning back to a favorite topic of this show, great movies that were never made, part three. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we will be slogging our way through Iron Fist episode 11. But first, I have to introduce my co host, Jacob Martin. Jacob, how are you, my friend?
I am doing well. The day we're recording this, which is a Monday, started school once again. It was a great day. Um, Definitely still enjoying life. The few movies I have watched, it's still been fun. I'm. It's been such a good experience.
That's good. I'm very happy for you in regards to that. Personal news on my end, as of today, we're recording this on Monday the 14th. I signed up for my first half marathon. It's
Oh,
gonna be
nice.
it's gonna be Sunday, November 26th. So the Sunday after Thanksgiving. It will be on the Space Coast of Florida, which is what we call it around here. It's basically pretty much a stone's throw away from the Kennedy Space Center where all the rockets were launched, and some still do through SpaceX. But it's a Florida tradition, and I'm doing the half marathon there for the very first time. Uh, there's something rather intimidating about doing a half marathon. I've never done one before, but I feel like I can do it, and so I'm very excited.
Well, continue to keep us posted up until the race. I'm hoping you do well.
Yeah, I'm also working on doing another big run, but I will reveal that more as it comes closer to it because it's still very much not done yet. But when it is ready, I will let you all know. But let's dive into some stuff we've been watching lately, Jacob. Why don't you go first? What have you been watching lately?
Well, again, just for fun, as I was on a Star Wars kick last week, I rewatched Episode Three, Revenge of the Sith. In my opinion, the best of the prequel trilogy. I have quite a bit of a nostalgia for this movie, as it was the first PG-13 film I ever saw in the theater. I was about 10 years old at the time. This was my favorite Star Wars movie as a kid. It's a movie I've always liked. Where its place in my rankings has been kind of fluctuated with all the other Star Wars movies that have come out over the years. However, on this rewatch, I can safely say Revenge of the Sith is in my top three Star Wars movies. I think this is a fantastic film. It's definitely the prequel film that George Lucas was the most passionate in making, as this was the film I think he wanted to tell from the beginning, where you see Anakin's fall from being a Jedi to becoming Darth Vader, pretty much. And the film pretty much plays out like a tragedy, where you see the deception around Anakin, how he's easily manipulated into becoming Darth Vader. And it's a very tragic tale. It's a very dark story. There's a pretty high body count in the film. Some of the themes that it does address in the film with corruption, manipulation, and betrayal. And I think the film pretty much shows pretty much the downfall of Anakin Skywalker, somebody who lost everything because he put his trust in the wrong person, making a deal with the devil, pretty much. This is a great movie. Hayden Christensen, I think, is fantastic as Anakin Skywalker. I think he's even better once his character turns into Darth Vader. He especially reveled in the evil side of the character and does a great job. I love the action in this movie, especially the final lightsaber battle between Anakin and Obi-Wan. It's epic yet also heartbreaking at the same time because it's brother against brother. And I think it's easily not only the best choreographed of the lightsaber battles, but it's also the most emotional out of all the lightsaber battles because of the brother versus brother thing. Yeah, you can poke fun of some of the dialogue and Darth Vader going no at the end of the movie, but I still think it's a fantastic film regardless. It's easily the best of the prequels, and I think out of all of the Star Wars movies, especially in the prequel era, this did the best job of showing why the prequel trilogy does matter and how it factors in to the original trilogy that everybody loves.
Yeah, Revenge of the Sith is not perfect, but it when it hits, it like really, really hits. And I think I said that for Attack of the Clones last week too, but it still applies because this movie is just when it's hot, it's hot. The lightsaber fight at the end on Mustafar, Jacob, you brought it up. It is fantastic. And like you said, best choreographed lightsaber fight. I believe you said of the prequels or of the series in
I
general.
would say of the series in general.
All right, then, yeah, I would definitely agree with you because they start out in one place and then they go on to the lava lake on Mustafar, and it's been memed to death. The whole "It's over, Anakin. I have the high ground." So yeah, it's been memed to death there, but it's it's a very well done fight. It's emotional. It packs a wallop. It's just really, really well done, and then everything leading up to it. Honestly, it has one of my favorite openings of any Star Wars movie where you get the opening crawl, and then you see and the camera pans down and you see Coruscant, and then you see Obi-Wan and Anakin, and they're fighters, and they're basically trying to rescue the Chancellor from General Grievous. And it's a one shot take for like the first 5-ish minutes, and it is so beautiful to look at from the opening crawl to when Anakin says his first line of dialogue, "Lock on R2." It's so well done.
Yeah, I think say what you will about George Lucas as a writer, but he is a fantastic visual director. Even the CGI in Revenge of the Sith, for the most part, still holds up pretty good. And I can definitely see how James Cameron would take what Lucas tried to do with the prequel trilogy and apply it to his Avatar films.
It wouldn't surprise me because, yeah, like you said, Lucas is just honestly that whole first act of where Obi-Wan and Anakin are trying to rescue the Chancellor is so good from that first few minutes to when they're on the ship to when they fight Count Dooku to when they meet General Grievous, which, by the way, I'm kind of a General Grievous defender. I think he's a great Star Wars villain, especially like his design of the hunched over and just the whole like and just the coughing nature of it, and just the fact that when you dive into his lore, you realize that this is a very dark character. He was a flesh and blood, and then he just became this machine because he was near death. It was just crazy, crazy stuff, and his voice is just so iconic as well. The General Kenobi. It's just great stuff.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed General Grievous as a character. I remember being so floored, 10 years old, when I saw this film for the first time, and it's revealed that General Grievous can wield not one, not two, not three, but four lightsabers all at once, and he was like twirling them
Or
around, going crazy,
yeah,
trying to
that
take
was
on Obi-Wan Kenobi. That was the coolest thing when I was 10 years old, and I still enjoy that a lot.
whenever I get a medal for when I do like a 5K or something, I always say another fine addition to the collection in the General Grievous voice. I got a lot of medals, but I still do the another fine addition to my collection. So yeah, Revenge is great stuff
Yeah.
mostly. But what else you got?
Also, I recently did a live collab on my channel with Jacob Collins, but I did get to watch Scream 6 finally. I didn't see this one in theaters. I had no real interest in seeing Scream 6. I was not that big a fan of Scream 5. I thought it was a mixed bag. And I did not like the treatment of what happened with Nev Campbell. She refused to star in the film because of a pay dispute with the studio. And I'm like, Sidney Prescott is like the main face of the franchise. You can't do her dirty like that. And I was like, oh, this movie's gonna suck. But I did see the film. I still miss Nev Campbell. Her presence is missed in the film. The movie's not perfect, but as a whole, I thought it was a step up from the last movie. I think the film had more of a fresh identity in this movie compared to the last film, which I thought was kind of a pale, shallow remake of the first movie, kind of like a pale legacy sequel type movie. Scream 6, on the other hand, I think there's a little bit more entertainment value to it. It's probably the least meta of the Scream movies. There's still some meta comedy in there, but as someone who's getting a little bit tired of the meta comedy, especially when it's done bad, like in Matrix Resurrections. I like that, this movie, there's still a little bit of it in there. It's there when it needs to be, but for the most part, it sticks to the ghost face stuff and everything like that. And I thought it was a little refreshing. It was a little bit, it's definitely one of the more violent entries in the Scream franchise, which I thought was pretty refreshing. Some really well done chase sequences. There's a great scene where characters have to go from one apartment building to the next through a ladder, and I thought that was very suspenseful and almost Alfred Hitchcock like, which I thought was good. Some good performances. Melissa Barrera, Jenna Ortega, they reprised their roles from the last movie. I liked both of their characters a little bit more in Scream 6. And if anything, it takes the characters from the previous movie and I guess brings them more into a family unit, which I thought was pretty neat. There's also a good mystery surrounding Ghostface, which I thought was really neat. And I did like the twist in Scream 6 as well. Again, the lack of Sydney Prescott was very felt. I wish we still had her in the film. And I think the film had maybe one or two death cheats in the film that didn't really feel earned. I prefer the Scream movies where they're like, the characters aren't safe, even fan favorite characters, because there's been some shocking deaths, character deaths in previous films, and they killed, or you're meant to think they killed off characters in this movie, but they're somehow still alive, and it felt almost Fast and Furious like in this movie almost. And I'm like, really? But still, I think this is a better Scream film than Scream 5. And I think there's still some juice left in this franchise, even without Wes Craven.
I don't think, and Jacob, you've seen more of these than I have. Is there a genuinely is there a Scream entry that people just don't like straight up just don't like? There's one that's seen as like the bad one? Because I've heard nothing but good, like the consensus around all of them that I've read at least, they've been mostly good. Like, am I
Well,
wrong?
I had mixed thoughts on Scream 5, but that film was mostly well liked. I think the film that many people see as the weakest is Scream 3. Jacob Collins hates Scream 3. He thinks it's a terrible movie. But even that one still has its fair share of fans. I didn't think Scream 3 was that bad. It was flawed, but I think it gets a little too much hate.
Interesting. I've only seen one and two, and I like one, but honestly, I think I may prefer two over one. And I don't know how much of a hot take that is, but I think Scream 2 was better than I was expecting, and I think it more than did an admirable job of taking what Wes Craven started with one and just expanding upon it. Even though Wes Craven, I believe, didn't have any involvement with Scream 2, if my memory serves me right.
He directed the first four movies.
Oh, well, wow, that was a screw up on my part. Brain
Yeah.
fart, my bad. But yeah, but Scream 2, I thought was I like it personally over the first one. I like them both, but two over one just barely.
Okay, uh, I think that might be an unpopular take, but I think Scream 2 is a good sequel. I prefer the first one, but hey, I do appreciate your opinion.
Absolutely. Well, what else you got?
The other one, I watched this for the first time the other night. I've kind of been on a Tim Allen kick lately because ever since they added his sitcom Home Improvement to Disney Plus, I've been watching that sitcom on the side, and I think that is a genuinely funny show that actually still holds up all these years later. But I'm not talking about Home Improvement. I'm talking about a movie that Tim Allen starred in that I watched for the first time. It's on Disney Plus. It's called Jungle to Jungle, released in 1997, which I had seen posters and maybe a VHS for this film a time or two over the years. Never watched it as a kid. All I knew was that Tim Allen was in it. But I decided to finally give the film a watch. If you don't know the premise of the film, Tim Allen plays a Wall Street broker who uh, he and his wife are separated. He's trying to get a divorce because he wants to marry another woman who's in like the fashion world and she's very snobbish. And he travels to South America somewhere, I forget where, to meet with his ex to get the divorce finalized. But while he's trying to do that, he finds out that in this past marriage, he has a son who's been living among this native tribe. And so he's into like uh, hunting and riding, climbing and riding, you know, fishing and stuff like that, catching animals and stuff. Uh, Even though he's like a 13-year-old boy, he is a good huntsman. And through different circumstances, Tim Allen, the father, ends up reluctantly taking him back to New York City for the week uh, due to some like comical circumstances. The film also has Martin Short in the film, who works with Tim Allen in the Wall Street area. Both actors are really funny in this movie. I find it crazy that Tim Allen and Martin Short were in a movie together before Santa Claus 3, where Martin Short completely stole the show from Tim Allen as Jack Frost. But here, even though Tim Allen has more screen time and he's really funny in this, I like that both he and Martin Short are both equally as funny in their roles. The film definitely goes into some weird places. There are some bizarrely dark jokes in the film. There's a weird subplot involving the Russian mafia, which is so odd that it's in a family comedy like this. But even with all that, I was laughing my butt off from start to finish. I think the film took advantage of its comedic premise along with the fish out of water angle with this kid who's been raised in the jungles who is now walking alongside Tim Allen in New York City. It's predictable at times, uh, but the movie is still charming. I enjoyed the sense of humor, a little bit of dark humor in there for a Disney comedy, and I greatly appreciated that. And I thought the film is severely underrated. Come to find out, the film currently has a 19% on Rotten Tomatoes, and Gene Siskel named it his worst film of that year, 1997. And I actually thought the film was a blast. If you and Rachel still had your Hidden Gems podcast, I would say this is a hidden gem. I actually do really enjoy this film, and I think more people need to check it out.
Yeah, I remember watching this a very long time ago, and I have nothing but respect for Siskel and Ebert. I mean, they were two of the best to ever do it. I think I respectfully disagree with Gene Siskel. The movie is not great, but not worst of 1997. Uh, I have watched pretty much like 85% of the movies from 97, so I would have to look at my personal list. I think there was one movie that I saw from that year that I just hated, and I'm sure that if I saw the title, I know the one. But Jungle to Jungle was cringy. It definitely had its moments where I was like, that didn't age well, but I could see I could see why you liked it and I could see why people liked it because Tim Allen I think is genuinely really funny. he seems like the kind of guy like in the mid to late 90s, he was almost unstoppable. Home Improvement was the number one sitcom in America. He was killing it in the stand-up world. He was Buzz Lightyear in the Toy Story films. He was getting acting roles all over the place. You could not stop Tim Allen for anything. And so, again, I didn't love this movie. I felt like it had a big heart and the message was very nice. His heart was in the right place and all that. It just, a lot of it, I was like, it's not super great, but not worst. Like, just kind of mediocre. But it's mediocre with some good moments, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, if I have a weird sense of humor, the thing that got the biggest laugh out of me was when Tim Allen was playing around with the little what's that thing? What's that dart shooter thing that the kid has, and he accidentally shoots his fiance's cat.
It's like a blowgun, I think.
Yeah, something like that. Uh, I thought that I'm not for animal cruelty of any kind, but I still thought that was ridiculously funny.
Yeah, I honestly don't remember that, but I just kind of want to look it up now.
It's I thought it, see when the joke started, I thought, did he just kill the cat by accident? But no, it just put them to sleep.
Dang, Disney in the late 90s, they were not playing around. Yeah, like stand-up comics shooting cats with poison darts. Like, whoa,
Oh,
guys, come on. But if
but yeah,
that's
that's all I've watched. What have you watched?
so, a couple of new releases and I'll breeze through those. I don't, Jacob, I don't know if you remember if I brought up Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem last week.
I think you might have watched. Did you watch? Did you talk about? I think you might have talked about that last week. Did you enjoy that one?
I did. I honestly, and not a big Ninja Turtles guy. I didn't know what to expect with this one. I honestly liked it more than I thought I would. The biggest compliment that I can give to the movie is that I was thinking it was going to be Into the Spider-Verse light because of the animation style. However, it's not an Into the Spider-Verse clone. It just so happens to have a very similar animation style to what Into and Across the Spider-Verse have accomplished. It's similar, but it's enough to stand out on its own, and basically it becomes its own thing, which I did appreciate. The voice cast I thought was very good, but the standout to me was Ice Cube as Superfly. The villain was not prepared for how much I enjoyed that villain, but just I thought that his motivation was pretty relatable in the context of a massive fly wanting to wipe out humanity because he never felt any love. I'm sure I can relate to that somehow, but it's weird. But I thought Ice Cube did a really good job with his performance. I thought most of the acting was pretty good. I like Jackie Chan as Splinter. I thought that was a fun choice. Um, my lone gripe is that some of the pop culture references I did not personally care for. Like there is a scene, it involves April O'Neil and it involves basically her kind of stage fright or fear of cameras because she wanted to do the morning announcements at her school and she basically vomited on camera. And you see the vomit scene and it's hyper stylized while soundtracked to the song Unwritten by Natasha Bedingfield. And Jacob, I don't know if you've ever heard of that song,
Yeah, I know that song.
but when I heard it, I was like, what in the world is Seth Rogen smoking when he wrote that? Because Seth Rogen not only has a voice in this, but he also wrote the screenplay for it along with his screenwriting partner, Evan Goldberg. And you all know in various mediums that I'm not a big Seth Rogen guy. He made one of my least favorite Christmas movies of all time, Office Christmas Party. I feel like he is very one note in terms of his jokes. It involves something very dirty and followed up with his laughter like that. That is basically his humor. And there is literally a joke in the movie where April O'Neil is in the sewer with the turtles and she sees a cockroach surfing on a on a turd. And she's, oh, a cockroach is surfing on a turd, and I have to watch that. I'm like, that's pretty much every Seth Rogen movie right there. a cockroach surfing on a turd that we have to watch. But I gotta give him credit. He made a very good Ninja Turtles movie, and they teased another one. I'm honestly gonna go and see it if it is made. So I'm man enough to admit when I'm wrong about something, and I was wrong about Seth Rogen this time around. He made a very good Ninja Turtles movie.
Yeah, I'm not like that crazy on Seth Rogen either. I actually tolerate him more for his voice work than anything else, but I do find him to be a pretty one note comedian as far as how he approaches stuff. I didn't mind his comedy. What was that one he did with Charlize Theron where she's running for president or
Long
whatever?
shot.
Long
Long shot.
shot. That one wasn't too bad. It was not great, but he was at least trying something different, at least.
Yeah, so Mutant Mayhem was honestly better than I thought it would be. Earlier today, I saw the horror film Talk to Me, which I had heard nothing but good things about, and I was afraid because I was planning on seeing it, but at first I was like, it's gonna be a little overhyped, and I was worried about that. Turns out, no, it may be my favorite horror movie of the year. It may even be better than Evil Dead Rise, which was my favorite, but I think it's pretty much tied at this point. It basically revolves around these teenagers and this hand, this mannequin hand, like what you see in like a jewelry store where you see it on display with a ring or a watch, like that kind of a hand. And you basically do this with the hand and you say, talk to me, and you see something very scary, and then you say that I will let you in. And you basically get possessed for a certain amount of time, and then it leaves once a candle is blown out. However, there is a rule where if you keep it inside you for a certain amount of time, it stays with you forever. And well, that basically happens to one of the main characters. And like I said, I didn't know what to expect from this movie. I thought it was genuinely one of the more freaky movies that I've seen all year. There were definitely some moments where I was like, I am so glad that I watched this in the afternoon and not the evening, because if it would have been in the evening, I would have been like looking over my shoulder as I walked to the car, which rarely happens to me with horror movies anymore. And that's not a commentary on quality. It's just a thing where I've seen some pretty freaky horror movies to where I'm bulletproof at this point. But with Talk to Me, I was not prepared, and I was a little leery walking out of the theater, which was a genuine accomplishment. I won't go any further than that, but I will describe it like this. If any of you have ever seen Hereditary or Midsommar or anything by Ari Aster, this movie is an Ari Aster movie, but 1,000 times less pretentious and far more effective than any of his movies.
Hmm. It's an interesting comparison. I saw Hereditary once and thought it was very freaky. Uh, yeah, talk to me when you were describing about talking to these evil possessed hands. The weird thing that got me wondering was if only the hand in Iron Fist acted like that, and the show would be far more memorable.
That is definitely for sure. But that show had no such hope. But yeah, Talk to Me is up among my list of pleasant surprises for the year. And then continuing my road to Saw 10, basically last week I watched 4, 5, 6, and the final chapter, and I'll speed run through all of those. The one that I genuinely disliked was Saw 5, and that's the introduction, or not the introduction, but the assumption, I won't spoil anything, basically the change in the hierarchy of what happens to Jigsaw. Long story short, this detective named Hoffman basically leaves the police and becomes, or not, well, basically becomes involved with Jigsaw in a way that I will not spoil. And I wasn't a big fan of the decision. Again, I'll speak in vague terms. He's very sloppy in general. He just goes into it for the wrong reasons. And I mean, Jigsaw himself went into it for the wrong reasons. Let's not get it twisted. But in going into something for the wrong reasons, Hoffman went into it for the wrong reasons. And I hope that that makes some sense out there. Jacob, am I making any sense?
You're You're trying to.
So yeah, basically Jigsaw goes into it trying to teach people that they should be grateful for the things that they have in their life. Hoffman basically goes into it to exact vengeance on people who have wronged him. And Jigsaw has a bit of that too, but it's less pronounced. I hope that was somewhat explanatory. But the introduction of Hoffman, I was just not a big fan of. However, honestly, the only one that I outright dislike of this series so far is five. The rest, I have honestly quite enjoyed. They're not perfect by any means. I wouldn't call these movies high art or anything. You can't screen these at con. They're not cinema. But honestly, the fact that the continuity is as attempted to keep it as tight as it is and trying to make it all make sense, I honestly kind of admire that. I don't think it all works, but I admire the commitment to trying to make it all work within this universe because writers come and go, but there's a genuine sense of flow to it. And we've seen with a lot of bigger movies, last the last Star Wars trilogy, for example, where there's jarring senses of tonal change and just general character motives changing. With these Saw movies, with these new writing teams, they keep the motives mostly the same. And it almost, and maybe outside of stylistic choices, the movies don't really feel that different from each other, which could be a criticism, but I honestly like that they kind of flow together. Again, these movies are not perfect. They do have genuine problems. The traps do get genuinely very sensational, and the games at a certain point are just like, are we just having games for the sake of having games? Like, what's going on here? But seven movies deep into this series, I would have started hating these a lot further, but honestly, I haven't. The only one I outright dislike is five, and the others I can say genuinely like that was at least good, which is genuinely shocking to me.
Which is kind of interesting because I've the consensus that I've heard on these Scream movies is not Scream movies. We talked about Scream, the Saw
Yeah,
movies,
yeah.
is that they went downhill after the third movie after James Wan and Lee Winnell stopped making them.
They definitely take there's definitely a lack of their presence here. I'm not going to I'm not going to say that once they left they got better. That their fingerprints definitely helped like the general quality of these movies in terms of technical side of things. But I didn't hate any of these, maybe except for five. I can definitely say that four, six, and the final chapter, I walked away from saying, you know what? Those weren't bad. The ending to the final chapter, and I won't spoil it and for any of you watching or Jacob, it's genuinely like a really good ending. I was honestly surprised by how satisfying the ending was. And of course, it wasn't the ending. We got Jigsaw and then Spiral and then the upcoming Saw 10. So I'm not losing sight of that. But this Saw rewatch, I did not know what to expect, but I'm walking out of it. Honestly, I got more satisfaction out of this than the Wes Anderson watch along, which I did not predict for this year, but here we are. Because the Wes Anderson one, it got rough at points. I was watching Royal Tenenbaums like, what am I doing with my life? Like that movie is Royal Tenenbaums is not fun. I would honestly prefer watching some of the Saw sequels over Royal Tenenbaums, and you all can take that and run with whatever you want, but that's my stance and I'm sticking to it.
I was not expecting that comparison, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm just gonna leave that alone, but I pass it off to all of you. What have you all been watching lately? Let us know in the comments. Love to read what you have to say. And brief housekeeping, Small Talk episode 3 will be, or episode 3 dropped yesterday, so if you all didn't check it out, it's currently live on the channel and on Spotify, so do check that out. But speaking of TV and superhero TV shows, I guess we have to get into Iron Fist. We only have a couple more episodes of this, and I am so happy that that is the case because this has just been a slog, and it has not helped me that I've been watching Smallville at the same time. And even I've encountered my first couple episodes where I'm like, yeah, I didn't like that, but those were at least fun. This is just boring. But we've only got a couple more episodes left. Let's just charge our way through. Let's get into season 1, episode 11, Lead Horse Back to Stable. Claire uses her improvisational skills, and Colleen gets conflicting information. Danny yearns to be more than just a destroyer. So there is something that happens in the first few minutes of this episode where we see Danny pass Con Lao and become the test. I believe it's called the Con Lao, and become the Iron Fist with the tattoo and the fists and the whole nine. I said I said to myself when I saw this, this could have been the show. Just Danny Rand, like a few years after the plane crash, just growing up in this community, making friends and basically being the outsider, but he is picked to be the Iron Fist, or he says that he is going to be the Iron Fist, and then working his way toward that. Would have been very Kung Fu Panda esque, but it would have been somewhat decent. But no, 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 no. We are not so lucky in that regard. We got this where there's like something involving like Colleen's a part of the hand now. Jacob, make it make sense, man, please.
Okay, to be honest, you forgot to watch the episode last week, which I watched it last week, and I haven't rewatched the episode or anything. I'm still trying to remember what happened in the episode because I was just so bored by this episode. Like there was no real growth of process in the story in this episode. Yeah, Danny Rand has trust issues. Colleen was a part of the hand, but that was revealed last week. I guess it's emphasized that the hand is the hand, and even in the change of management, the hand is still bad. But I think we knew that last week and or in the previous episode, and we still got that boring drama with the Meachums. I'm sick of the Meachums already. I'm tired of all that crap. This is still another uninspiring episode. I don't have much to say. The sooner we're done with Iron Fist, the better.
Well, we only have 2 episodes left, so it's not going to be much longer now. But yeah, I just and we're earnestly trying, you guys. We're not slumming on this on purpose. It's just the show is just genuinely not great. Like I would much rather watch Jessica Jones season 1 over this again because
Yeah.
that at least had some intrigue of who Kilgrave is, what is his relationship to Jessica, what really happened when they were a thing, for lack of a better word. We can't even get that. Is like
Yeah.
Danny running around doing his old thing, the Meachums doing the diet off-brand non-union legally distinct succession, and then you got the hand trying to just saying like, hey, we're the hand and we're evil. I'm like, yeah, we watched Daredevil season 2, we know this. It's like washing dishes that have already been washed, like we get it. So yeah.
Yeah, and you bring up an interesting point about Jessica Jones season one because there were some issues I had with Jessica Jones season one. Some of the subplots in that season were absolutely stupid, especially with the I forget the character's name, but the police officer guy. That subplot was awful. But there was still some good stuff in that show with the the lead performance, the Kilgrave stuff, the mystery. I thought was very engaging, and I still think there's a lot more substance to Jessica Jones, far more substance than anything in Iron Fist, where there's so much potential you could have. Even you mentioned at the beginning, like I would have loved to have seen what Kun Lun is like and what how he got to be the Iron Fist instead of these like cheap old flashbacks where it's kind of like in the shadows, like what like he's saying what he's done, but the show doesn't earn what he's done. This is just such a frustrating show where for every decent idea, there's like five bad ideas, and this is a very annoying show. And the more I think about Iron Fist, the more I really dislike this show. And this episode proved that you did not have to stretch this into 13 episodes.
No, no, you really don't. Uh, I think we can safely say we both didn't like it. Pass it off to all of you. What you think of the episode? Comment below. Let us know. But let's get into the main event for the evening, Jacob. Let's talk about part 3 of great movies that were never made. I found an article on Variety talking about, well, best movies never made. But one movie that the article left out, which was actually a gift from our mutual friend Jacob Collins from 3D Movie Cinema, was so good that I could not leave it out. So, we all know Lord of the Rings. We all know the Peter Jackson trilogy. We know the Hobbit trilogy. We know the animated movie from Ralph Bakshi. We all know this. But apparently, there was a Lord of the Rings movie set to release, which would have been produced by and starred the Beatles, like John, Paul, George, and Ringo, and directed, Jacob, get ready for this, directed by Stanley Kubrick.
What? What?
Let,
What?
I found the article on Screen Rant. This concept isn't actually as strange as it sounds. Yes, it is. In decades past, it wasn't unusual for widely popular music artists to have strong presence in movie theaters. Elvis Presley, and it goes on to talk about that. The Beatles' interest in adapting Lord of the Rings came from Dennis O'Dell, who helped produce the band's big screen musical efforts. I don't know, ads keep popping up and it keeps me from reading it.
It's been a hard day's night, and I've been working like a
Like a
dog.
dog.
It's been a hard day's night.
The Beatles had one more film left on their contract at United Artists. They had done Hard Day's Night and Help, so there was a precedent there. It has since been confirmed by Paul McCartney that McCartney would have been Frodo, John Lennon would have been Gollum, George Harrison would have been Gandalf, and Ringo Starr would have been Samwise Gamgee.
I cannot picture any of those Beatles playing those characters.
John Lennon as Gollum. That visual is just killing me right now.
But I can't even see. I can't even picture him going mad over the precious. All I could hear him say is supposedly if you play one of the Beatles songs backwards, supposedly he says, "Tune me on, dead man." I can only picture him saying that to Frodo, maybe, or say that to the Precious. Tune me on, Precious.
So according to the article, Kubrick was eyed, but Kubrick was a fan of the material. However, he thought bringing Tolkien to live action in the 60s was not feasible, and he was onto something there. According to Peter Jackson, the Beatles' Lord of the Rings movie was killed completely when Tolkien basically said, "Yeah, I'm not a fan of you guys. You're not getting my IP." So Tolkien basically looked in the future and saw what a crap prospect this was and killed it.
Ooh,
So good on Tolkien for doing that, but
yeah, definitely. That
it, it's it's so weird to think about the fact that the Beatles would have been in Lord of the Rings like 4 decades before 3 or 4 decades before Peter Jackson even comes into the picture.
I can't really picture Stanley Kubrick doing Lord of the Rings because he would have made it too artsy fartsy. And then the Beatles would have been the biggest miscast.
Yeah, it just was it was odd. I mean, the Beatles in the 60s, I mean, that was their hottest point. So I'm trying to circle the square here. The Beatles were literally everywhere. They were the biggest thing going at the time. Like you couldn't you slap the Beatles on a lemonade stand and it would have immediately sold out. So I'm not blind to the monetary possibilities, just from the art side of things. I just hate this.
This is wow. I did not know this was a thing. And
No, shout out
kudos
to
to Jacob Collins for unearthing this.
yeah, thank you to you, Jacob Collins, if you are watching this. But let's dive into the Variety article, starting off with Matt Stone and Trey Parker's Deep Fake, the movie. So this would have been from the South Park creators, and it would have been about, and to quote the article, but it turns out the project had its roots in a full-length Donald Trump deepfake movie that Parker and Stone were working on and then scrapped because of the pandemic. Parker's saying it was going to be deep fake the movie. It was about this guy who looked exactly like Trump because we deep faked Trump's face onto him. And it was this whole funny thing because, of course, it ends up with Trump just naked and getting run through the ringer and everything. And that's why it was so funny and timely. Uh, would you have liked to seen this, Jacob? I think I know the answer.
Um, um, don't really want to get political here.
Yeah, let's
I know Trump gets the butt end of many jokes, but I
and
think it would have been too on the nose, and it probably would have taken me out of it.
seems like
Probably
from the sounds of the article, he's like these guys were working on it like 2018, 19, and it would have come out in 2020. And it, well, obviously that didn't happen. So if it were to come out like say now, I don't think it would have. I mean, I guess it would have been relevant. This is just so weird that like
it's just a weird story, just a weird idea. I don't know. I mean, political satire, you have to draw a fine line. I'd rather it be less on the nose than what it sounds like these guys were trying to do. But yeah, that one just yeah, that's just a weird idea.
yeah, very weird. But next up on the article is Michael Mann's James Dean biopic starring Leonardo DiCaprio. Michael Mann revealed earlier this year, this was August 22 when this was published, so just keep that in mind. Revealed earlier this year that he was developing a biographical drama about Rebel Without a Cause icon James Dean that would have starred a young Leonardo DiCaprio in the role. According to Mann, the movie had a brilliant screenplay but couldn't be made at the time because DiCaprio was too young looking for the role. Yeah, I would have loved to have seen this one, but obviously if he was too if DiCaprio was too young, you would have to imagine, and considering Michael Mann's, I believe Heat came out in 95, Titanic came out in 97, so it would have been in that mid to late 90s ballpark. So 96, 97, 98. I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio was pretty hot, like star power wise, around this time, Titanic and all of that. So it is incredibly feasible. But James Dean is someone who just is endlessly interesting because he only made like three movies: Rebel Without a Cause, Giant, and I can't remember the third one. And then
East of
he's
Eden.
sorry.
East of Eden.
Oh, East of Eden, thank you. And then he sadly passed away in that car accident. So I think a James Dean biopic is honestly overdue. Like he's someone I'd love to see a biopic made of.
Yeah, yeah, I would love to see, as much as I'm tired of your generic standard biopics, a James Dean one I'm surprised hadn't been made yet because, like you said, his career was short lived and he was only involved in three fantastic movies and had so much potential to do more. And then his personal life is interesting too, along with, of course, sadly, the car wreck that tragically killed him. Uh, DiCaprio sounds like he would have been a great choice, especially in like young DiCaprio as he was just getting started, because he had the look. He could have pulled off the look of James Dean. He could. I don't think he could do it now because he's older, but late 90s, early 2000s DiCaprio, Titanic, Catch Me If You Can, that era, I think he would have been great. So I think of the projects we've discussed so far, this one sounds like the biggest missed opportunity.
Yeah, well, we have a few more to go, so let's press on. Next up is Christopher Nolan's Howard Hughes biopic starring Jim Carrey. Martin Scorsese's Howard Hughes biopic The Aviator grossed over $200 million worldwide and earned 11 Academy Award nominations. The movie also killed any shot of Christopher Nolan ever making his own Howard Hughes biographical drama, which the filmmaker had long planned until Scorsese's film stole the thunder. Nolan said to the Daily Beast in 2007 that the script for his Hughes biopic was the best thing he'd written, and he'd even lined up Jim Carrey to star as Hughes. According to Nolan, Hughes was the role that Carrey was born to play. Once Scorsese's The Aviator opened and killed Nolan's Hughes movie, the Dunkirk Oscar nominee went ahead and revamped Batman with Warner Brothers' Batman Begins. Well, we all know how that story ended, but yeah, I mean, we have The Aviator with Martin Scorsese, and I haven't seen it all the way through, but what I have seen is genuinely very good. So, I mean, there is that. But Jim Carrey as Howard Hughes, that would have been something that I would have loved to see because Jim Carrey is someone who is known for Ace Ventura, Dumb and Dumber, The Mask, very comedic and over the top, but he can be a very serious, dramatic actor too. So it's not completely out of bounds for this to happen, Jacob.
Yeah, this one's kind of tricky because I actually really liked The Aviator from Martin Scorsese, and I think it has one of DiCaprio's best performances. He played Howard Hughes in that movie, but I can totally see Jim Carrey playing Howard Hughes. It doesn't seem odd to me that no one would want to cast Jim Carrey. I think because Howard Hughes was somebody who had OCD and he went really crazy near the end of his life. And Jim Carrey could have pulled that side off to a T with some of his more over the top comedic roles, but doing that in a more serious film would have showed that okay, Carrey has more range than just being the goofy comedic actor, and we've seen that even in movies like the Truman Show, for instance. And I've not seen Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, but apparently he's really dramatic in that movie. I It would have been interesting to see what Nolan would have done. However, at the same time, I think Scorsese made as good of a Howard Hughes film as you could possibly get. So I'm not as sad that this one didn't get made. It's just to me an interesting what if.
I mean, it showed, and Jacob, I don't want to spoil Oppenheimer for you if you have not seen it.
Sadly, I've still not seen that movie, but
But Nolan knows how to do a biopic. I will just leave it at that. So yeah, sad to not see it go, but or sad that it is no longer happening. But next up on the list, and I imagine this would have been on there, Star Wars: Duel of the Fates. Uh,
okay.
Rise of Skywalker ended the most recent Star Wars trilogy on a disastrous note. No duh. And the movie that fans got was miles away from the ninth Star Wars film Lucasfilm originally planned. The script for Colin Trevorrow's movie included bigger roles for John Boyega's Finn and Kelly Marie Tran's Rose, the latter of whom was nearly absent from The Rise of Skywalker. She had two scenes, precisely two. If my memory serves me right, and I'm not rewatching that movie anytime soon. These two characters set out on a mission to unite the galaxy in a rebellion against the First Order. Daisy Ridley's Rey still goes to find the good in Adam Driver's Kylo Ren, but his story was far more darker, and he confronted the history of the Sith after getting in contact with Palpatine's Sith Master Tor Valum. So yeah, Rise of Skywalker was awful, and Jacob, I know you like it, so I'm not going to go too deep into it. I'm not going to stomp a mud hole in a movie that I've already stomped a mud hole in. But I found the sequel trilogy largely disappointing. I don't broadcast that because that windmill has been tilted at for quite a while now. But yeah, reading about Trevorrow's script, and Trevorrow is like he directed Jurassic World, a movie I don't like, and he also directed The Book of Henry, which I have not seen, but I have heard nothing but bad things about. So I'm not saying that the finished product would have been great, but just from the sounds of it and what his screenplay was suggesting, it seems like it would have at least connected like what happens in Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, where Rise of Skywalker just feels like miles away from whatever even The Last Jedi was doing. It feels like just a completely like it feels like it, I don't even want to talk about it. It just is too painful.
All right. Well, I it's no secret that I enjoyed all the sequel movies, even the Rise of Skywalker. I don't think Rise of Skywalker was a huge retcon from The Last Jedi. I think, with the exception of the reveal of Rey's parentage, I think for the most part, it at least respected the other two films enough. And I thought it was still an enjoyable entry in the franchise, even though it's my least favorite of the three. I've looked at what Trevorrow's original script would have been. There's a lot of ideas that I think would have been awesome. Some aspects I think would have improved what J.J. Abrams' film ended up being. Like, I do agree that Finn was sidelined, Rose was sidelined. I wish we had more of those characters interacting. And Finn would have been a Jedi in Trevorrow's film, which I think that's what they were building up to in episode 7, but they wasted that potential. I don't know why that was ditched in the final version. I still enjoyed episode 9 for what it was. I think, as flawed and messy as some aspects are in the story, I think it still had some intriguing directions that I was still getting into. I enjoyed, obviously, Daisy Ridley and Adam Driver's performances in the final film, and the film still had some epic stuff in it. I'm curious how I would have felt if Trevorrow made his episode 9. I can't fully say whether I would have liked his over the one we got, though, because it would have just depended on how it was executed. And as much as I like the episode 9 we got, there's some aspects I think maybe could have been better, but I'm still satisfied for the most part with the episode 9 we got, leaving, in my opinion, Duel of the Fates to me is another interesting what if.
For sure, for sure. But yeah, Star Wars is in a freaking weird place. I mean, we could do an entire podcast just talking about that, but let's put a pin in that for right now. Just a couple more of these left. But next up is Quentin Tarantino's Double V Vega. This would have been a Pulp Fiction prequel, which would have been set with Vincent Vega and his time in Amsterdam, which is referenced frequently throughout Pulp Fiction. I would have liked to have seen that because it seems like with what we know about Vincent Vega and what we know about Amsterdam, he learned a lot more than just what do they call a quarter pounder with cheese in Amsterdam, or that they top fries with mayo in Amsterdam.
Yeah, I think Quentin Tarantino has several projects that he attempted to make over the years that never really came through. And if he wanted to make another film set in the Pulp Fiction universe, I definitely would have been interested in seeing it. Pulp Fiction is one of his best movies. I think there was, I don't know if this is the same project you're looking at, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he had intended for Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs to be in the same universe, and he wanted to have a crossover between, I think, John Travolta's character and Michael Madsen's characters from both movies.
I believe if my memory serves me right, they were supposed to be brothers.
That would have been awesome if that was the case. I would have been interested in that.
Yeah, but sadly, because, well, Vincent Vega died in Pulp Fiction, and so did Michael Madsen in Reservoir Dogs, sadly, that'll never happen. But it's again, it's another really interesting what if. But next up is Patty Jenkins's Thor 2. So, Thor: The Dark World is widely considered the worst Marvel Cinematic Universe movie ever made. It's not, but but could have been a whole lot better if Patty Jenkins stayed on to direct it. Jenkins left the movie after battling Marvel over the script. She said, "I did not believe that I could make a good movie out of the script that they were planning on doing. I think it would have been a huge deal. It would have looked like it was my fault. It would have looked like, oh my God, this woman directed it and she missed all these things." So Patty Jenkins is weird because she directed Wonder Woman and then she was supposed to direct Rogue Squadron for Lucasfilm, and now she's no longer even doing that. And Wonder Woman 3, as of this recording, is now no longer in development as well. So it's very weird, but I don't hate Thor 2. I think it's funny in places. I don't understand the hate for it at all. So it's a weird movie to talk about, but I defend it on more than one occasion.
Mm. Yeah, Thor: The Dark World for me is a mixed bag. There's some entertainment value to be had. I especially enjoy the scenes when Thor and Loki are on screen, but it has way too many tonal shifts, and the film arguably has probably the worst villain in the entire MCU. Like I could not care less about Malekith the Dark Elf, as bland as a rock, and honestly, I could care less about the stakes and urgency in that movie. Patty Jenkins, I've read a little bit what she was gonna do in Thor: The Dark World, and it would have been like this Romeo and Juliet type love story with Thor and Jane Foster, and I think the Dark Elves. There would have been a lot more development with the characters, and I think Odin was gonna be more of kind of like he was kind of like a villain in Patty Jenkins' original draft because I think he was the one that recruited the Dark Elves to try to mess with Thor and Jane's try to kill Jane because he did not approve of their relationship, which would have been an interesting choice, but definitely a bold one. I'm curious how the movie would have been if she had directed it and Marvel trusted her vision because I think Jenkins' film I think would have been more interesting than the movie we got. But that's just me personally.
Yeah, the DCEU went through a lot of crap, but we can all agree that Wonder Woman was one of the best things to come out of it. And Patty
Yeah,
Jenkins has a large hand in that.
Wonder Woman's probably my top three DCU movies, and as hated as Wonder Woman 1984 is, I think that film gets way too much hate. It's not as good as the first movie, but I still enjoy Patty Jenkins' direction on the film, and I did not mind what she brought to that sequel.
I've seen some people call it among the worst. I'm like, no, not in a universe where Fantastic, Batman and Robin and Spawn also exist. No, it is not the worst. It is a bad movie with some inspired parts in it. That's what I will say on that. But got like two more left. Next up is Sofia Coppola's The Little Mermaid. Sofia Coppola joined forces with Universal Pictures on working title for a live-action Little Mermaid, that would have sidestepped the famous Disney animated film. Again, and returned the story back to its darker roots in the original Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale. Coppola's determination not to make her Little Mermaid fun for the whole family ultimately clashed with the studios, who ended up not wanting to spend so much money on underwater effects for such a risky take on the material. Coppola left the movie after spending a year developing it. Considering the fact that this year we got that crappy Little Mermaid movie, I would pay top dollar to see what Sofia Coppola does with it.
Yeah, and I still haven't seen Disney's live action of Little Mermaid. It didn't look appealing to me at all. This one,
It's not good. Like
yeah,
Aquafina singing, Jesus wept.
oh my. Sophia's version, I would have been more interested in seeing, mainly because she's not remaking the Disney film. She's adapting the original Hans Christian Andersen story, which is vastly different from the Disney film, and it has a darker ending. To me, that's more interesting than Disney doing a half-baked live action remake of a much better animated movie just to make an easy cash grab.
Yeah, and it's a Coppola, so of course it's gonna look and sound outstanding, and the acting's gonna be really good. So it sucks that Sofia Coppola like wasted a year and it never got off the ground. But I guess we will truly never know on that one. I am excited for her Priscilla film, her film on Priscilla Presley. Like Jacob, I don't know if you've seen the trailer for this one yet.
I haven't seen the trailer, but I know it exists.
Yeah, but it sounds promising. But last one before we close this one out. Jacob, you've read the book Harold and the Purple Crayon, right?
Maybe.
Well, that book was supposed to be adapted by Spike Jonze of Her and Where the Wild Things Are. Jacob just face
And I thought
palm.
I thought the Beatles and Lord of the Rings was weird.
Sony Pictures is currently in production on Harold and the Purple Crayon, an adaptation of the beloved Crockett Johnson novel with Rio Helmer, Carlos Saldana in the director's chair, and a cast that includes Zachary Levi, Zoe Deschanel, Lil Rel Howery, and Ravi Patel. Unfortunately, Sony's new Harold movie means Spike Jonze's version is officially dead. Jones, who hasn't directed a feature film since Her, originally wanted to get Harold and the Purple Crayon off the ground before he went into production on Where the Wild Things Are, based on another fantastical children's story. Jones had actually met with Wild Things author Maurice Sendak to develop a new way to blend live-action photography and animation for his Harold movie. A short test film was created to show executives at TriStar that a full feature could be made, but they ended up backing out of the movie 2 months before cameras were set to start rolling over fears that the budget wouldn't turn a profit. Considering the fact that Spike Jonze makes, well, Spike Jonze movies and music videos, there is, I have a morbid curiosity, but also a great fear of just of what he would have done with a story like Harold and the Purple Crayon, because from what I remember of that book, it's very much based on imagination, and yeah, Spike Jonze has got an imagination, all right.
Yeah, and I've seen his version of Where the Wild Things Are. It's been quite a few years, but I remembered watching it, and I did not care for his version at all. I get what he was trying to do a more mature version of the story, but I don't think it fully worked. I think it took away the charm of the original book, and the wild things in that version were just pure nightmare fuel. I did not care for what Spike Jonze did to Where the Wild Things Are. And I cannot imagine what he would have done with Harold and the Purple Crayon. He would have turned it into this weird, trippy, fever nightmare fuel that would not have been that would have been unlike the book at all. So I don't really like saying I'm glad the project was ditched because I'm intrigued by what filmmakers do, but I honestly I could care less if that movie was a real thing because it sounds like it would have been weird.
Definitely weird, definitely for sure. But I think we could do a part 4 of this because there are so many like movies from directors we all know and love, but for one reason or another they just fall flat or they get abandoned. So I think we can do a part 4 of this, Jacob, down the line.
Yeah, for sure.
But I pass it off to all of you. If there is a movie that we talked about that you would see on day one, what would it be? Let us know in the comments. Love to read what you have to say. And Jacob, it's a privilege to do this with you every week. Tell the people where they can find you.
Well, they can find me on Letterboxd, Twitter, and Facebook, and you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel where I do movie reviews, TV reviews, all that fun stuff. As of what's coming on the channel this week, I'll be premiering my videos on Extraction and Extraction 2. And then, actually, I think I've already done the next What I've Watched live stream. It's on Monday. We're recording this on Monday, so I haven't done it yet. But Wednesday morning, which would already happen as you're watching this, I'll have done my what I've watched live stream where I share my thoughts on some of the recent movies that I've watched, and I'll cover some of the Star Wars movies I've rewatched. I'll do Saw on my channel. I'll also do some recent celebrating Disney movies that I've watched and I'll cover on the channel, like Leroy and Stitch and Jungle to Jungle, Fox and the Hound 2, and The Haunted Mansion, starring Eddie Murphy, among others. So that live stream's already been out as this video is dropped, but you can go back and watch the replay at least.
Yeah, Jacob's channel's linked in the description. Go give him a subscribe there. As for this channel, Small Talk episode 3 is now live. Go check that out. It's a ton of fun. And then this coming Friday, continuing my road to Saw 10 by reviewing Saw 3. So definitely be on the lookout for all of that. But for Jacob Martin, my name is Ryan Cam. We will see you in the next one. You all take care.